Now in this video, I'd like to share with you some thoughts on how to apply some of the principles of andragogy in your classroom. But that's what we're going to consider. So it's great that we're learning a lot about adult education and the differences between pedagogy and andragogy and the adult learner. But how does that translate into my class? What techniques or what can I do to apply the principles of andragogy, of adult education, in my classroom today, tomorrow? So the first one that we're going to consider is, as we have already considered, the adult learner wants to be autonomous. That is self-directed. So that's the first one that we're going to consider, autonomy. Now, if we want them to enjoy the fact that they can be autonomous in their learning, then what can we do as facilitators or as teachers? Well, we have to get them involved actively in their learning. Now, do you know the difference between passive learning and active learning? Now, passive learning, you're there, you're sitting, you're listening to what the teacher is saying, and you're trying to get as much as you can inside your mind. So that is partly what passive learning is. Now, active learning is when the learner is really actively involved in what he is learning. So he's more active in it. So you have to get him involved by doing different types of activities. It could be role playing, for instance. It could be that he reads a portion of a chapter or something, then he presents it to the rest of the class. Or maybe there's a type of procedure that you need to teach them, and you teach them, then you ask one of the students to show the rest of the classroom the procedure, how to do a certain thing. So that's one way that we can actively involve our students, and they will like that. As adult learners, they'll like that. Another thing too, need opportunity to engage in critically reflective thinking. Now, we have to stretch the mind of our learner. And sometimes I say that to my students. I say, I know I'm introducing you to new concepts and even new words, but what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to stretch your brain. I'm trying to stretch what you have here to make you think. And sometimes I bring them scenarios like, what would you do in this scenario? And sometimes what I bring them is very, very difficult to have an answer, for instance. And sometimes I create a good debate among my students. So that'll make them reflect. And as adults, we like that. Now, maybe you're a teacher that's teaching trades. Maybe saying, well, that's not pertinent to what I do. Yes, it is. Let's say there's a certain way that a thing needs to be done. You're a professional in your trade, and you know that it has to be done in this way. Well, then ask them a question. Why do you think it has to be done in this way? Make them think, reflect, and through that, they're going to learn. So that's a way we can use critically reflective thinking. Now, it's been said, and it's true. In the concept or the idea of andragogy, adult learning or teaching, the teacher, his role should be principally the facilitator. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't share knowledge and that we don't teach and we don't lecture. That's not what it is. But really, as an adult educator, we should learn to facilitate the discussion in our classroom. So, facilitator guiding learners to acquire or construct their own knowledge. Now, we're going to talk about that in another course, the idea of constructing knowledge, the principle of that. So scaffolding, so you build on top of what was already built. So that we're going to talk about that in another course. But when we're facilitating the discussion in our classroom or where we are and where we're teaching, they're constructing knowledge. Very important. Now, another one is be empowered to work on topics in areas reflecting their own interests, learning contracts. So you can ask your students, especially if it's a small group. It's a big group, it's going to be a bit difficult. But if it's a small group, you can ask them, okay, what would you like to learn about this? You ask them. And well, I'd like to learn about this. I don't really understand that and this, right? So by doing that, they say, well, they're showing you what interest they have. And then you, as a facilitator, can have a bit of flexibility in what you're going to offer them. You say, okay, sure, you want to learn about that? Everybody agree? Sure. Okay, we're going to learn about that today. So that they're really going to like that. It's going to really bring up their motivation. And also, we have to encourage and teach our students to take responsibility for their own learning. Now, I say this to my students now. I say in French, there's not really a true equivalent in English. Maybe there is. If so, you can put it in this discussion. Now, I say to them, what is the difference between... Well, I ask them this question. Est-ce que je peux vous apprendre quelque chose? And I'm going to say in English, which sounds really weird. Can I learn you something? Well, in French, sometimes we use the verb apprendre, to learn, in a way that it's almost synonymous to teaching. And they say, of course you can learn me something. I say, no, I can't. All I can do is teach you. I can facilitate. You are the one doing the learning. So that's one thing we have to understand as teachers. We are the ones facilitating, teaching, almost like we're setting up a buffet of different types of food. They have to pick what food they like, right? I mean, we have we select the plates, for instance, menu, but I mean, they have to go at it themselves. So we have to make them understand, look, you have to be actively involved in the learning process. I mean, as teachers, we're passionate to see our students grow and we give ourselves a lot, but still, the bottom line is the students need to be actively involved in the learning process. So that is the first thing that I'd like to highlight, is the fact of autonomy for the learner. And we have to make sure that we give them the time to be autonomous in their learning. Now, the second topic I would like to consider is life experiences and knowledge. So we spoke about that earlier on in another video, and also some of the readings that you've done for this course. As an adult, we acquire experiences and also knowledge. That can be either through work-related situations or maybe they got diplomas or certifications or bachelor's degree or whatever. They acquired knowledge and experience. We have to be conscious of that as teachers, that the students in front of us, even if they're adolescents, okay, they've acquired some knowledges and also some experience. We have to be conscious of that. So then, what do we do? The fact that they have acquired knowledge and experience, what do we do as teachers? Well, we have to draw it out from them. And sometimes they're shy. But what they have experienced or learned in the past through different circumstances could be good for them to say, and also good for the rest of the classroom. Because sometimes they don't even realize that they have gained experience and knowledge through their experience in the past. So by saying it, they realize, well, yeah, you're right. I've already learned about this and that, and a bit about this and a bit about that. So it'll benefit themselves, but also it'll benefit the rest of the class. But that has to be strategic. We have to be conscious of that, and we have to draw it out from our students. That's very important. So we have to recognize that our students, they have a wealth of knowledge and experience. So as teachers, we have to draw it out consciously. Now, the third one should be relevancy oriented. Okay, relevancy oriented. Adult must see a reason for learning something. Adults should see a reason for learning something. When we're teaching something, a lot of adults and young adolescents, or young adults, I should say, they're thinking in their mind, what's in it for me? Why am I learning this? Right? So we have to be conscious of that. Are you conscious of that? That when you're teaching, that your students, when you're listening to you, they're thinking, what is that worth? Why are you teaching me that? Maybe you're thinking, well, look, just learn it. You have to learn it. Well, that's not really a proper attitude to have. We should be the ones understanding that, yeah, they need to understand why they're learning something. So it's a mind shift. It's the way that we're seeing our interaction between us as teachers and them as students. Another thing too is very, very important is that the learning objectives have to be clarified right from the beginning. They have to be identified early. When you're starting a class, a program, or a year, a semester, you have to give them an idea where they're going. That's very important. Especially at the beginning of class, say, look, today, this is what we're going to cover. If we have time, we might cover this. But this is what I'm planning to cover today. That. I try to write it on the blackboard. Okay, we're going to do this, this, and that. 3 or 4 points, maybe 5. If you have 1 hour with them, 4 or 5 points, that's enough, like 4 or 5 topics in 1 hour to develop it, to give them a chance to understand it, to talk among themselves. I mean, don't, like some people I've seen before, and I hope it's not you. If you're using PowerPoints and you have 1 hour and you have 30 slides, really? Have you calculated? 30 slides, 1 hour? That's 2 minutes per slide, and then you have to kind of do the introduction and kind of close your class. I mean, you're just going to talk very quickly. You're going to be very tired. So, I mean, in our session, you shouldn't have more than 5 or 6 slides. And on those slides, I mean, I'm going to talk about that in another video, but just to be very practical here, on each slide, you shouldn't have a lot of words. I mean, it's not a textbook. Maybe have 6 to 8 bullets, and maybe each bullet has 6 to 10 words. Keep it concise. I mean, that's just to help you for the flow of your class. Okay, but they need to know where you're going. That's very important. Tell them at the beginning, this is what we're going to do today. We're going to try to do this today. Maybe you're a carpenter or a bricklayer, or you're working as an electrician. You're teaching young electricians. Well, you got to tell them, okay, today, this is what we're going to see. So they know, all right, good, this is where we're going. Be very clear. That's very important. Learning needs to be relevant, applicable to their area of work. Okay, so make sure that what you're teaching them, that they can use it next week. That's very important. Allow a participant to select topics that reflect their area of interest also, because if they pick something, well, then the relevancy oriented is right there. If they pick something, they find it relevant, then you teach about it. All right, so that's the third topic. The first topic we considered what? Autonomy. Okay, so we have to make sure we understand that adults, learner like autonomy. The second one is what? The accumulation of life experiences. So we have to keep that in consideration when we're teaching. The third one is what? Relevancy oriented. Now that's it for part 1. See you in part 2.